You're walking through the sand dunes in the Westerland desert, searching for the lost lair of the Ifrit warlord that ruled this blasted land millennia ago, and whose sorcerous warfare reduced the land to a wasted heath. The GM leans over the table and looks at you. The atmosphere is tense and you can almost feel the heat of the desert. There are two paths winding through the dunes. One of them heads off to the east and the other to the west. You can see some ruins to the west, and from the eastern path a group of hyena men scavengers are approaching. Wait a minute, you think. Shouldn't I be able to go anywhere in the desert? Where did these paths come from? And why aren't the hyena men using the dunes as cover whilst they approach? It's at that point you realise you've fallen prey to one of the most deadly forms of predator in RPGs. The Hidden Dungeon. So, what do I mean by the Hidden Dungeon? Well, I'm not talking about your standard dungeon crawl. If you like dungeon crawls, then fill your boots. I've no problems with them, although I'm generally not a big fan myself. And if you want to know more about why, then you can see it in my video there. No, what I'm talking about is games where they have the trappings of a different type of game, or present themselves as being something else. But then it quickly becomes obvious that if you scratch the surface, it's actually a dungeon crawl with some normally fairly unconvincing camouflage just draped over it. Now, I don't know about you, but if I sign up for a game knowing it's going to be a dungeon crawl style game, I've no problems with that. Even though it's not my preferred style of RPG, I've played in some very entertaining dungeon crawls. Rob Davis, the Swamper, ran a D&D 5th edition game that we knew from the start was going to be a dungeon crawl trap fest of a dungeon. We went into that with our eyes open, and I had a very enjoyable couple of sessions with it. The game was as advertised. However, unless it's done very skillfully, advertising a game as one thing and then pulling the rug out from under your players and switching the game can be quite irritating. Now, if it's something like Numenera or other weird genre style of game, I'm expecting bizarreness and craziness and that the setting can change. So that's all good. However, if for example I turned up expecting to play a normal World of Darkness vampire game though, and suddenly the GM announced that we were all in the Matrix or in some sort of future science fiction game, then it's not actually the game I was wanting to play. It might be entertaining, but why not just tell me what the themes of the games are going to be at the start so I can make an informed choice about whether I want to play or not. I'm not saying you have to reveal all the secrets in the game, far from it. But if we're going to be playing in some sort of post-apocalyptic, blasted, sci-fi future wasteland, why not just say that at the start? Or even if you don't want to reveal how the setting is going to change, you could say, well, we're going to start off playing in a D&D game, in the standard sort of pseudo-fantasy setting, but there is going to be a dramatic change of the setting at some point during the game. So, why does the Hidden Dungeon crop up so much in games? Well, one of the advantages of dungeons, in my opinion, is that they neatly restrict the actions that the PCs can take, and they make it easier for a GM to plan out. If you have a choice of 3 corridors, for instance, then the GM knows you're generally going to go down one of them. He can map out all the different rooms, drop in the contents, etc., and plan everything out fairly easily. Now, please note this is not always the case. Some GMs really do go the extra mile with their dungeons, and kudos to anyone who can make a dungeon interesting and have it seem reasonable within the campaign setting. I often find in games that a dungeon turns up when the GM either does not have a very good grasp on the background of their campaign world or has not had time to plan out the session to the extent they would like. A simple, if not particularly good, dungeon can be planned fairly quickly. Hell, there's even random dungeon generators available on the internet. And it also removes any worries that the GM may have about players going off and doing anything wild and wacky. So, am I saying that all GMs running dungeon crawls are insecure in their planning abilities? No, of course I'm not. The GMs who run dungeons vary wildly in ability and other characteristics as much as any other types of GMs. There's good GMs, there's bad GMs. And to be honest, my issue isn't so much with the use of dungeons during a game. It's more games not being as advertised and dungeons being used as a quick option to make up for lack of planning. It does annoy me that dungeon crawls are seen as something of an easy option by some GMs. They're not an easy option. Making a bland two-dimensional dungeon is an easy option. Creating an enthralling one that is internally consistent, exciting, and that engages the players and makes them want to keep exploring it is just as challenging, if not more so, due to how well established a trope dungeon crawls are, than creating any other sort of session. If you want to create a dungeon crawl for your game, then make sure you put the effort into creating it. But please, please don't advertise a game as one thing and then revert to a dungeon crawl because it seems like an easy option. So there's my thoughts on the hidden dungeon crawl. I hope you've enjoyed this video. You consider clicking on the red dice there to subscribe to my channel. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you have any thoughts or comments on this, put them in the comments box down below. Or, as always, hit me up in the Google Plus links. I really do enjoy reading what you write. So until I see you in the next video, take care and happy gaming.